Good morning. Thank you for joining me again here today. This fine Thursday morning. This week is flying by. This month is flying by. We're going to be out of July before long. And it's just amazing how time is flying. And so I appreciate you spending a little bit of that valuable time with me this morning as we continue to walk through the Psalms and look at their life lessons. Most of the Psalms, as you know, were written out of response to an experience, a situation, and many times in David's life, sometimes in another writer, but many of the Psalms penned by David. And these are simply his reaction, his response to those times. Psalm 21 was a response to good times. Psalm 22 is a response to bad times. How David responded, how he talked to God, how he conducted himself, how he reacted in a time of discouragement, at a time of defeat, and how he prayed. And so there's some great lessons there for us because all of us at times go through those valleys, those difficult times in our life where we feel like God's not listening, where we have been abandoned, and how David handles himself, how he deals with this situation is a marvelous example to us of how to conduct ourselves in times like those. Someone has said you're either headed for a valley, in a valley, or just coming out of a valley. And it does seem like many times, without being a pessimist, it does seem like many times in life it does kind of follow kind of that pattern from mountaintops to valleys, mountaintops to valleys. I hope you're on a mountaintop this morning, but if you're in a valley or headed to one, this psalm will be a great, I think, encouragement and instruction for you. So we'll be picking up in verse 9 of the 22nd Psalm. David has been discussing the various ways that, showing us various ways that he responded. One, just kind of rehearse them real quick. Verse 1, he shows us that it's okay to tell God that we have a burden. Okay, to let God know that we are upset, to ask him why. We to remind him of how hard we've been praying in verse 2, to remind him that we've been talking to him about the situation. Verse 3 again puts things, make sure we keep it in a proper perspective, that God is still, he is still sovereign. He is still on the throne. David reminds God, tells God that he is being persecuted by the people around him. He is going through those kinds of times. He lets God know that he's being persecuted by people. I think he calls names here in that situation. And now we come to verse 9, where David says, "But thou art he that took me out of the womb. Thou didst make me hope when I was upon my mother's breast." And so the next thing that David teaches us about dealing with discouragement and those times of those valley seasons that come in to our life, is that he reflects on, he remembers, he says, "You are the one who took me out of the womb. You made me hope when I was upon my mother's breast." And so David here in his time of defeat, I think what one way of looking at that is, even though he's looking and saying there are a lot of people who are opposed to me, Lord, you've been there since the beginning. You've been there even through childbirth, even through conception, through me being carried in my mother's womb, through birth, through childhood. Father, you have always been there. You have always taking care of me, and I expect no less today. I know that you could still. You will still take care of me. David acknowledges that God has been taking care of him, that God has preserved his life from very conception. And so one of the I think probably one of the best tools that we have in this psalm is this verse that we are reminded that sometimes we feel like God has abandoned us and left us to die. That if God wanted to do that, he could have done it a long time ago. But that God has provided, protected for us all the way back when we were physically unable to do anything for ourselves. We had no, except for God, we had no hope whatsoever. And so David acknowledges that, recognizes that, and I think what is in David's mind is you haven't failed me yet. You haven't abandoned me since childbirth, and I believe I'm counting on you to continue in that line of faithfulness. I was cast upon thee from the womb. Thou art my God from my mother's belly. And so David is saying, that he trusts God. He is, I think, acknowledging here his mother's role in raising him to trust God. But he's simply saying that since birth, all I've ever known, Lord, is you. I don't know. I can't remember who said it, and I'm certain I'm not going to get it exactly right, the quote, but I remember reading one time that someone said that many people, when they're in desperate situations, cast off from the Lord. And he said, but who do they cast to? That's the issue. And so I think David realizes I don't have anywhere else to turn. You're all I've known. You're all I've had, and so Lord, you're the only one. The only hope I've ever had. The only hope I have now. And so again, I think that's a good marker for us as believers when we go through those difficult times. Is to and I hate to keep beating this, but again, for many people, I think that's why they find the advantage of even journaling, that they're able to go back and read over their notes and think, things that maybe they had forgotten, and they go back and they read over their journal and go, oh yeah, I remember that time. Man, I thought I was done for. I thought I was a goner. But thank God he stepped in and he intervened in that situation. And so David said, that's been going on since I was born. Even when I was a child, from that point forward, I have cast myself and trusted in you. And so in verse 11, he says, be not far from me. And I think that just flows right out of what David just said. He says, Lord, you've been with me from birth. And so now, in this situation, don't be far from me. I think David is not only asking God to be near him, I think David is acknowledging and saying, Lord, don't leave me now. I can't do it without you. And so when he says, be not far from me, again, I think he is acknowledging his need. He is again letting God know that he is in trouble and that there's nowhere else he can turn. He doesn't know what to do. Read what else he says. For trouble is near, there is none to help. There is none to help. Again, David at this point, he's in a situation. I think if you read those verses together, you see a situation where David is looking and saying, Lord, I don't understand it. You've been with me since birth. You've been there from the very beginning, and I don't understand where you are now. Again, verse 1, why have you forsaken me? And so he says, he's just reminding God here, Lord, I don't have anywhere else to turn. I don't have anywhere else to go. There's no one else. You've protected me and provided for me since my birth. And at this point in my life, I don't know where else to turn. I don't know what else to do in this situation but to trust in you. And so I think that's a good place for us this morning to pause and to reflect a little bit on our own situation and where we are. That it has been God since the very beginning. And what David does here, I think, is so important. If you read this psalm, you really don't see the situation. David is not really so much looking at the situation, but he has his eyes on God. When we put our eyes on the situation instead of our God, we get overwhelmed. By placing his eyes on God and his confidence there, he is reminded of the faithfulness of his God, that God had never abandoned him, hadn't abandoned him since his birth. And so today, my challenge for you would be this: as you think about those verses, and as I said, somebody says you're either headed for a valley, in a valley, or coming out of a valley. And I hope today is a good day, and again, you're on the mountaintop. But can I challenge you to do something this morning? To take and pause, and let's look back and let's remember those valleys. Those times when it seemed like everyone else had turned their back, everyone else had left, but that God was faithful. We need those times. We need those markers. One of the things that we see in the Old Testament, they would build memorials, is what they call it. Sometimes they just pile up a pile of rocks, and it was a memorial to some event that they were putting down. We need some memorials in our lives, some markers on some of those important occasions when God came shining through in our darkest moment. Maybe this morning, right now, is your darkest moment. Praying for you. I want you to know God loves you and cares for you. Don't take your eyes off of him. He's been there for you from the very beginning, just like David. And he will see you through your situation today. I hope that helps you. I hope you learn something today. You take something from those few verses that will help you to keep your eyes on him, to keep focused on what God is doing more than the situation around you. All right, have a great day. We'll see you back here first thing tomorrow morning.